Hello and welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel. Hope everyone is doing well. Today I have 4 Reddit stories for you guys. All credit goes to the original posters of these stories. Creepy Tinder date may have had a secret. Good day, everyone. I decided to go ahead and make this account to type the story out and get sucked into the rabbit hole that is this app. I don't know if I actually avoided something sinister for a fact, but I'd rather play it safe and say that I did. I'm 29 female, and while I'm well-traveled and have been around quite a bit, I do occasionally make some pretty rookie mistakes. My fault, and I make no excuses. I try to remain diligent and alert, but I'm very capable of letting my guard down. So after being here in the US for about 2 months, I decided that I was bored sitting around my unit watching 90 Day Fiancé. So I decided to make the old dating profiles again. I made no specific intentions known about what I was interested in accomplishing, as I don't really know myself. I just wanted someone to hang out with and see where it goes naturally. I ended up matching with this one bloke who had shared interests with me. We chatted a bit over the app, and eventually I felt okay to give him my number. After talking back and forth for a couple of weeks, I agreed to meet up. We met at a pub and had a couple of drinks. I'll admit at first I didn't recognize him because he didn't resemble his photos to the extent that I was expecting. He didn't look bad by any means, but I could tell that he used older pictures and edited them enough to where he seemed more appealing. I swear I'm not trying to sound superficial because he was cute, just not what I was expecting. But I also think we've hit a point in social media culture where it's safe to assume that we don't see the same thing in real life as we do online, and that's okay. We did hit it off. We discussed the usual first date stuff. When we got into more detail, I told him about back home and work and how life was different than here in the States. At one point, we were talking and holding hands, and I felt comfortable enough to let him kiss me. Well, he asked me as we were leaving if I wanted to go back to his place for a cup of coffee. I told him I knew what coffee really meant, and that I didn't want to do that on a first date. He assured me it would be 1 cup of coffee and then he would give me a lift home so that I didn't have to call an Uber. I accepted his offer and we walked to his apartment, which was a few blocks away. As we were going upstairs, he made a few questionable remarks. He mentioned how I wasn't like most girls because I accepted his invitation and alluded that you never know, I could be a psychopath. He then motioned with his eyes down to my dress and inquired about my titty size. I told him again that I was sorry, but the night would not end with him getting lucky. As we got into his unit, he dismissed himself to the toilet and left me sitting on his bed. It was a studio, and he didn't have a couch. As I'm sitting there and waiting for him to finish doing whatever he was actually doing, I noticed in the corner by his bed that he had 2 masks. One was a cartoon-looking goat mask, and another was a cat, or maybe a tiger. What was more alarming was that he also had a Bowie knife and a small woodcutter's axe only a short distance away from them. Upon further observation, I also noticed there was a black jumper draped over a dresser. Then on his bedside table, there were a pair of latex gloves. Yawns. Okay, I don't much feel like being murdered tonight. I got up and calmly left the unit. Then I made my haste down the stairs and down the street, where I was able to catch a lift. Now look, I may have just really hurt his feelings, because he had no malicious intent, but if that's all that happened, then I'd prefer that over the possible alternative. All of these items alone wouldn't have been that bad, but all of these random items within a short walk from each other, I'd rather just not chance it. I do feel bad for leaving a person, but I don't feel bad about leaving what could have potentially been a dangerous situation. That, along with his random personality change, was enough for me to make the call that I made. As of recently, I noticed that he either blocked me from Tinder or deleted the app. Thanks for having a read. I hope the weekend finds you all well. It's hot, so please drink heaps of water, stay safe, and lots of love. I found hair in my daughter's bedroom, and what I found was terrifying. Daddy, when are we having dinner? My 4-year-old daughter looked at me. Any minute now, sweetheart. Melody skipped back into her room and I finished cooking. We sat down to eat dinner. My wife sat across from me with Melody between us. We ate our dinner and put our plates up. Dad, when's dinner ready? My 15-year-old daughter yelled from her room. Pretty soon, Mel. You hungry? To say the least, Mel groaned. I was making her favorite meal to celebrate her first chemo treatment this morning. She had been diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma just 2 weeks prior. We sat down to eat dinner. My wife across from me and Mel between us, like always. You look gorgeous, Melly, my wife said. Mom, you know I hate it when you call me that. And I don't look gorgeous? I look like an old man with my head shaved like this. Mel, it's just a new look. You'll get used to it eventually. I tried to calm her down, but to no avail. Mel had always had the prettiest curly blonde hair. She took pride in it, always saying it was her favorite part of herself. I had to admit it was weird seeing her without it. I might as well cut it shorter at this point. My wife and I chuckled, and so did Mel. We ate our dinner and put our plates off. Mel walked slowly back to her room, and I couldn't blame her. She was tired from treatment. The next morning, I drove her to school. She was holding a sketchbook, which was strange because she was never really the artsy type. I didn't question it. Mel wouldn't have answered anyway. When she came home from school, she scurried into her room without saying a word to me or my wife. She only emerged a few hours later to grab the family computer and a snack. She stayed in her room until morning, but I didn't feel like bothering her. I knew firsthand how horrible chemo felt, so I left her alone. The next morning as I drove her to school, she wouldn't stop touching her head. Is my hair growing back? Is my hair growing back? She asked, but her expression was a pure fear as her eyes darted back and forth. Not yet, Mel, but I'm sure it will grow back more beautiful once all this is done. I don't want it to grow back. It's too long, Dad. If it gets any longer... That was weird. She loved her hair, and the tone in her voice was not all sarcastic. I went out for coffee and then back home. I logged onto the computer to send an email. When I logged on, I saw over 100 tabs on hair cutting, hair scissors, how to shave your head, and how to make your hair shorter. The only problem was that Mel didn't have hair. I felt the need to look in her room. I found piles of long blonde hair swept up in a corner along with multiple razors and scissors. I was scared. Where was this hair coming from? Mel had done chemo and had gotten her head shaved a week prior. I needed to know, so I installed a camera in her room and made the video automatically upload to the computer. When Mel got home, she ran into her room and slammed the door shut. I went into our basement and logged onto the computer. I watched my daughter as she opened her closet to reveal what looked like a malnourished, pale, thin, hunched-over version of herself. She had shiny, black eyes and unkempt hair and nails. The thing chained Mel's feet to the ground and handed her the scissors. I saw it talk to my daughter as my daughter carefully used her razors and scissors to chop off this thing's hair. Mel cried the whole time. Then Mel gave the thing a sandwich. I then saw a blank expression appear on Mel's face, and she turned pale. Mel started talking to the thing. However, the camera did not have audio, so I could not hear their conversation. My daughter tried to leave the room, but the door wouldn't open. I heard glass break upstairs. I heard a voice almost like my daughter screaming, "I'm still hungry, Melody." I wanted to go help my daughter, but I couldn't move. I was petrified and scared of that thing. I watched the video as Mel tried to throw the thing out the window. Mel tried to stab it with scissors and tried to leave the house, but nothing worked. The thing always got in the way. Mel turned around and the thing started cutting my daughter's flesh off of her head, and she used the razor to slowly peel back my daughter's skull. The thing then unhinged its jaw and began to envelope Mel's head. She slumped over and went limp. Then the thing saw the camera. It ran on all fours and lunged for the camera. "Error," said the robotic voice of the computer. I ran upstairs as fast as I could. I ran to the door and tried to get in. "Mel, Mel!" I tried to kick down the door with my feet. "Answer me, please, Mel!" I started to bawl. Just then the door opened and I heard a voice. It was almost like my daughter's. As the door opened, I saw the whole thing. Piles of hair, chains on the ground, blood everywhere, and my daughter dead on the floor. I bolted towards Mel. "Melody! Melody! Wake up, please! Melody! Melody!" She laid there lifeless. I heard the door shut behind me, and I felt a tap on my shoulder. I was too scared to turn around. I heard the voice again. "Daddy, it's time for dinner." A murder of crows has been following me. Now I know why. A group of crows is called a murder. I never understood why that was until now. See, a few weeks ago, I was taking a walk in the afternoon. I was puffing on my cigarette when I felt a chill crawl up my neck. It creeped into my bones, and I felt eyes boring into the back of my neck. I quickened my pace, not daring to look back. There was a snap behind me, and I turned to see some leaves rustling and a crow staring back at me, with a red beanie in its mouth. I laughed to myself as I turned back around. I was nervous for no reason, I thought. I continued the walk briskly, even though it was just a crow. I couldn't shake the feeling of something being wrong. I felt a pit in my stomach the rest of the way home. I noticed my shoes weren't near the door where I usually leave them. The next day, as I got on my bike to work, I saw a few more crows circling above me. They followed me all the way to work, and then pecked at the windows at the cafe. The rest of the day went on as normal, except for this one man with a red beanie that kept giving me a smile that made my stomach turn. Something about his eyes. I heard the flap of the crows following me all the way home. That night, sleep did not come easily. I heard the crows pecking and screeching outside my window. They would take turns flying up to my window and slamming their beaks into the glass. I tensed up every time they made that horrible squawk, even when they eventually went quiet. I could feel them staring. The next few weeks I was on edge. I felt their beady little eyes follow me wherever I went. It got to a point that even when there weren't crows, I would hear footsteps behind me, and when I would turn, nothing. Every little sound would make me jump, be it the sound of the espresso machine or the wheels of the van that would leave around the same time I would. On my bike rides home, I would almost crash trying to speed up from the cloud of crows. At home, I swear, there were things moving just outside my vision, and when I would turn, there was something a bit out of place. I would notice my vase was tipped over, or my laundry would be scattered alongside the basket. Tonight I was sitting at home. The pecking had stopped for the day, yet I could see a shadow moving along the outside of my window. I heard tapping along the glass and walls. I heard a long, dull scrape at the front door. I sprinted upstairs and locked myself in my room. I heard some glass shatter downstairs and some footsteps stamping around. A man called out my name in a gruff voice. I am sitting here, typing this out, trying to pass the time. The crows were trying to warn me. I hope the police get here in time. The footsteps just stopped outside my room, and the crows are starting to screech. Don't open anything, even this post. I'm sorry for doing this to you, but I need help. Someone has to see this to provide me with an answer. I see them everywhere now. I'm not sure if it's one or many of them, but they're everywhere, and I'm terrified. Please, please save me while there's time. It started with an email, like one of those old chain messages that sends you a curse. Except this one was mostly just blank. The subject was written as Dead Man, and my curiosity got the better of me this time. So I clicked it open, and all it said inside was, "You will see." Honestly, I thought it was some silly dumb hoax, but it sent a slight shiver up my spine. Why would somebody send this to me? But there were so many reasonable explanations that soon flooded my head, and I soon forgot about it. It could remain in my bin until deletion in 30 days. 3 days, my final 3 days of happiness, passed and everything was normal. My mind wandered back to the strange email once or twice, but I already berated myself for my overreaction. Scared? Scared of what? A scammer on the internet? An unfunny joke? I had no idea yet how I'd altered my fate, potentially irreversibly. On the 4th day after the email, I first saw them. That night, I decided to watch an old movie I'd picked up in a charity shop on DVD, but I couldn't find the player's cable. It had been so long since I'd used it last. It was almost dark when I resorted to searching the attic. It's small, my attic, and poorly lit. But I had a fair idea of where everything was, so I quickly found a box marked cables at the very back left. I took my torch and I ripped off the tape and I opened it up to my horror. Shock barely describes how I felt when I saw them. Inside the box, a face, horrific in its uncanniness, pale white, grinning, without any teeth. I jumped backwards, with my heart beating loudly in my chest, and I rushed from the attic, as quickly as my arms and legs would take me. That night I slept poorly. Terrible dreams of that unholy face. In that quick glance, my subconscious took a snapshot of its features, to haunt me in my sleeping moments. It had no eyes, I realized. In fact, every aspect of its facade was reflected in harsh black and white, ceramic white skin, surrounding pools of evil black. Still smiling widely, without teeth to bare, I promised myself to stay out of the attic while I was alone, and I hoped I would never see that visage again. I was so wrong. The next day began as normal, and I decided that the events of the previous day had just been some awful delusion, amplified later by my sleepless state. Instead of dwelling on it, I dressed myself, headed to work, and busied myself with my day. "How was the movie?" a coworker asked me, and I shrugged a non-committal reply. There was no need to tell them why I hadn't watched it. They might think I need help. But the rest of the day sailed on smoothly until I was confronted with a familiar foe. Paper tray empty, the office printer red. I grabbed a new ream from the shelf and I opened the tray to an unwelcome sight. That face that haunted me all night. I screamed. Since then, I've seen so many times more. Always when I open an email, a box, a paper tray, I followed the pattern. Every time I feel as though my heart will explode, like I'm filled with an irrational dread. Whatever they are evil, malevolent, being or beings, sent to bring us dismay. And every time I see them, time gets shorter until the next. I've stopped opening things altogether. The doors of my house are all locked and my drawers are strewn on the floor. Cabinets, puzzle boxes, curtains. Who knows where I will see them next. I've opened this app as one final report to find help. Help before they're everywhere. Help before I see them every time I open my eyes. Thank you for listening. If you like this type of content, please consider subscribing and liking to my channel, and I will see you on the next one.